So we always hear people say that camera gear doesn't matter, and this video is all about why it does. So I'm pretty sure if you watched any of the big YouTubers before or heard a professional talk about camera gear, they often tell you that the gear doesn't matter. The reason why you look for these things is because you feel held back by the gear that you have, or you think if only you had the things that they have, you can get the things that you want to do done. They say things like, oh, the best camera is the camera that you have in your hand. Or the gear is not really important, it's about what you do with it. It's about the person behind the gear. And that does make sense because we understand that if you give somebody that doesn't know what they're doing a really good camera, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get really good results. But at the same time, when you think about it, you say, well, if the gear really doesn't matter, why are you using all this fancy stuff? If the gear really doesn't matter, how about we trade equipment and you use what I have and I get what you have? And of course, that's not going to happen because they have the gear that they have because gear matters. Now, when people say this, they're not trying to lie to you or mislead you or anything, and I'm pretty sure that everyone who's used this term means well. I've even used it myself sometimes. If the problem that the person is coming to me with really isn't because of the gear, then I will let them know. The gear is not what's holding you back. Gear is not the only thing that goes into great photos or great videos, but it definitely does matter. It's usually the why it matters and how it matters that's usually not covered in these videos, so that's what I'm going to go with you today. So in this video today, I'm going to be using footage from the iPhone 11 Pro Max, the GoPro Hero 8, the Sony a6300, and the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K that I'm filming on right now. Now, the first thing we normally think about when we're talking about comparing gear is the image quality. So obviously, if we compare the cameras I just named, the Sony will win hands down in photo and the Blackmagic will easily win in video. So it shouldn't be even a conversation on what's the best, but there's a catch. Technically speaking, all four of these cameras can shoot video and photo that's high quality enough to get the job done in a lot of situations. There's even been complete film shot with all four of these types of cameras before, so it's not that you can't get the image quality from any of these cameras that I just named. But one of the main things we don't look at is how the image was created, what did it take, and what happened on the other end of the camera for you to get the results that you get. So just because you have two cameras that might be able to produce exactly the same image quality, one camera might have taken more money, more time, and more effort to get to that same quality. And that's why people choose different cameras, and on YouTube you often compare footage side by side and you say, oh well, that camera's better. But you don't understand that the other camera might be a lot easier to use and save you a lot of time and a lot of money on set. So you can't just look at image quality and rule all rules with just that. So let's go through a few situations. Let's say if I need to take a picture of something inside of a vehicle and the picture needs to be posted like immediately to Instagram. It's something that you have to do in the moment. So my options would be to pull out my cell phone and snap a picture, or I can pull out my Sony and snap a picture. The problem with this is inside of a vehicle is a very high dynamic range scene. The interior of the car is darker and the windows are much brighter. So there's a lot of dynamic range between the two. The cell phone doesn't have the dynamic range to capture this scene properly. But the thing about a cell phone is it's very smart, which is why we call them smartphones. It has a lot of processing power and it can identify that this scene is beyond its technical, physical limitations. What that phone is going to do is merge multiple photos together at the press of a button to give you the best possible image that it can give you in that situation. Now I can do the same thing with the Sony, but it's not going to do it for me. I have to go and do everything manually. So whatever I take a picture of with the Sony, that's just how it's going to look, and it's not going to try to figure out why it looks like it looks. It's just giving you all the control and you do what you want with it. And that's a pro and a con at the same time. So in this situation, if I needed a high quality shot, I would use the Sony, but I'm on a time limitation, so I can't go and process the pictures and all of that. The cell phone, on the other hand, can immediately give me a somewhat usable image. It might not be the highest quality image, but if I needed to just show whatever it was that I was trying to show, and I needed to actually see it, the cell phone is going to give me the better result. Regardless of which one I have in my hand, my skill and talent level is exactly the same. So the only difference between those two situations is the gear. If I have just the Sony, then I might not be able to get the job done. The cell phone, on the other hand, will allow me to get the job done. So let's say you're a wildlife photographer or a sports photographer or taking pictures of anything that moves quickly. And let's say our cameras are identical. The only difference is that your camera shoots 4 frames per second and my camera shoots 11 frames per second. So that means I have 7 more chances than you of capturing the right shot in that moment, simply because my gear allows me to shoot more shots in the same amount of time as yours. You might get lucky and one of the 4 pictures that you got might be perfect, but I had almost 3 times the chance of getting the shot than you did, simply because of the gear that we use. You could be the best photographer in the world and I can be a beginner that's just learning the camera, but if your camera missed the shot because you didn't shoot enough frames per second and my camera did, I got the shot and you didn't, and your talent level is way beyond mine. So it had nothing to do with my talent, it had nothing to do with my creativity. It was all about the gear in that situation, having the proper gear. Now let's talk about vlogging. And here I have the GoPro Hero 8, and it's small, it's lightweight, it's compact, it's really easy to use. All I do is hit the record button and I don't have to worry about anything. So it might not be the best looking footage, but it's really easy footage to get, and it's a convenient camera to vlog on. And here I have the Pocket 4K, which is pretty ridiculous to vlog on. The image quality looks a lot better, but at the same time, my arm is struggling. This looks absolutely ridiculous walking around with, and I don't think this will make a very great vlogging camera. I'm going to have to ice my arm after this. The file size that I'm using is ridiculous. This is just overkill. I would much rather the GoPro, and now my arm's getting tired. But on the other hand, this Pocket 4K definitely has its strengths. I can shoot 4K at 12-bit RAW for as long as I have space and battery on the camera, and I don't have to worry about any overheating or anything. So let's say I use all 4 of the cameras that we talked about, and for some reason I dramatically overexposed the shots. So whatever happened, the shots are all dramatically overexposed. So let's start with the iPhone. It's overexposed, and let's try pulling it down. This is what you get, the before and the after. Now the GoPro, overexposed and pulling it down, this is what you get before and after. The Sony, overexposed, pulling it down, this is what you get before and after. And the Pocket 4K, overexposed, pulling it down, before and after. But since the footage is shot in RAW, I can go in and change the ISO and bam, perfect footage. No level of skill or experience could have went in and made those other shots usable. They were literally unusable. So if that situation happened to you, having the right gear made the difference between having no shot and having a perfect shot. Even with this shot, if I didn't have the light that I have in front of me, I would have to use the light from the room. And I have a window, but the way that the house is positioned, it doesn't really let light in, and the window is very small. So this is what this shot would look like without that light and using the light that's in the room. So obviously I would have to make some dramatic changes to get things to look somewhat decent. But since I have the light, this is what it looks like. So you pretty much get it by now. Gear does matter in some technical aspects, but gear can't replace creativity, right? No, it can't replace creativity, but it sure can limit your creativity. What if you had a cool photo shoot idea to use a prism in your photography, but you didn't have a prism? Well, you're not doing prism photography, are you? Now you can be creative with it and go use a glass out of the kitchen or try to do some kind of effects in Photoshop. But even then, that's still having the right gear. If you have a glass, you have the gear that you need. If you have Photoshop, you have the gear that you need. Without the gear, without that glass, without Photoshop, you're even more stuck. If I have this, then I can get the effect right in camera and don't have to worry about having to go in and try to add effects or settling for an effect that it's not quite what I wanted, but it's similar to the effect of the prism. So not having the right gear definitely does limit your creativity. So often what you have to do is conform your creativity or conform your vision to what you have available to you. Now that's something that's not necessarily a bad thing because it'll never really change. Even the people who have millions and millions of dollars of budgets to use, you're still going to have a limitation. Like that money runs out eventually. You might have spent $200 million on making a film, but you had to limit this or limit that or settle for this and settle for that because maybe you needed $230 million. Like it's always going to be a wall that you hit at every level. If you're a beginner or if you're the most advanced expert ever, you're going to hit a wall at some point. So you don't think that once you get to a certain level that'll be it, because I have this Blackmagic right here, right? I didn't always have this camera. It'd be great to have 2 of them or 3 of them, then I can do even more. But when I only had my Canon T5i that I started with, this would have blown my mind. Right now, this doesn't blow my mind. I'm looking at the limitations that I currently have. It's like, oh, I only have one. So if I wanted to get a second angle at the same time, I would have to settle for a camera with less quality. So you have to understand that the limitations that you have often fuel your creativity, because you have to get creative to get the things that you want to get. So you have to look at the limitations that you have from your gear to fuel your creativity. It's like, yeah, you might not be able to do this, you might not be able to do that, but that doesn't give you an excuse not to be creative. And that's what they're really saying when they say the gear doesn't matter. When I first started with that Canon T5i, I used to take pictures of everything. Grass, leaves, sticks, dirt, everything. Everything looked like something to take a picture of. If I can hand myself the gear I have now to me back then, who knows what I would create. I might have made a whole dirt documentary. I don't know. And a lot of the people that I know personally don't necessarily have the best camera gear. Their work is just dope because they're dope creative. Imagine if you had to make a YouTube video and you had no computer and you couldn't review the footage that you shot because it was all shot on film. Well, at one point in time, entire movies were shot that way. We have the luxury of being able to pull out a cell phone that can shoot 4K 60 frames per second, and we can watch it, edit it, and everything on the phone and upload it all on the phone. Yeah, there are things that are going to give you better quality, but obviously that is far more than you need to actually create a good piece of work. So gear is important. It can open doors, it can save you time, money, effort, it can allow you to be more creative, all kinds of things. But there's no reason to not create. The gear that you have right now will pave the way for the gear that you're going to get in the future. The Canon T5i that I started with is the reason why I have all the things I have now. And all of the things that I have now are going to be the reason for the things that I have in the future. So I hope this video was better than me just telling you that gear doesn't matter, and I hope it gave you more insight and understanding on, yes, gear matters, gear changes a lot of things, but at the same time, it's not just the gear. Gear does matter, but there's more to the story than just the gear. So if you like this video, please subscribe, leave any questions or comments you have down below, follow me on Instagram, and I will see you guys in the next one.